Have you ever wondered what goes on the murderer's mind before he killed? But first I have a request. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. And let's get started. In 2008, one of the best superheroes movies was released, which is The Dark Knight. As you all might know, this movie was a great success, and the whole world was speaking about it, and especially the Joker character who was played by the actor Heath Ledger. This character was literally everywhere. At the same time as that, there was a student at Westview High School named James Holmes. James was a normal student. He didn't have many friends, and he was quite a weirdo compared to other students, which made him feel quite lonely. But I think it's normal, we all didn't have friends at a specific period in our life. And in the end, he's just a normal teenager who likes video games and loves movies a lot. Whenever he comes back home from school, he heads directly toward his room. And although his family is so supportive of him, James has a genetic disease that runs in most family members, which is hallucinations. However, the disease took a different turn with James, because it developed until he started listening to strange voices. It bothered him so much that he attempted to suicide just to get rid of them. But his family rescued him at the last moment, and they decided to get him sessions with a psychologist. And it was at this time James heard a lot about the movie The Dark Knight. So he went to the cinema to watch it and see for himself if it's good as people say. After watching the movie, James got so attached to the Joker character. He felt that he understood the character and that he resembled him and that it was a part of him. When James went back home, he started searching more about the Joker character. He wanted to know more about the brilliant actor who played the role. But he was shocked when he found out that the actor Heath Ledger, who played the Joker, died because of an overdose of drugs before the movie was released in the cinema. The boy was upset by that, and he felt lonely again. But he discovered that before Heath Ledger died, he used to write diaries to help him build the character he played. So James decided to write his diary too. At the same time, there was this girl who got to know James. Her name was Gargi Data, and they ended up dating. But although the girl thought that they were just a school couple, James, on the other hand, was so much emotionally invested. And maybe it was because it was the first time James went into a relationship he felt too hot. And obviously, since they were going out, the girl loved him too, though she always felt that there was a dark side in his life, and her suspicions were proven right when one day he confessed to her that he had the desire to kill. And because of that sentence, Gargi broke up with him, which caused James to change to the worse, starting with stopping the visits to his therapist.
All right, our next speaker is James Holmes. He has what school did you graduate from?
Westview High School.
He just graduated from Westview High School and will be attending the University of California, Riverside. He will be majoring in neuroscience. His goals are to become a researcher and to make scientific discoveries.
And between the years of 2008 and 2012, James grew up, went to university, and lived in a small apartment next to it. But then he started to write weird questions in his diary. Questions like, what's the meaning of life? What's the meaning of death? Why did God command us not to commit murder, but left us with the ability to do it? In addition to 7 pages full of the word why. And the words got bigger on each page. Even the people who knew him started to realize that he became quite crazy and that he suddenly smirks coldly for no reason. Just like the Joker. They asked him to go to a psychologist, so he went and told him about it. everything. How he loves weapons, and that he thinks that it's a brilliant invention. The idea of killing someone was normal and perfectly appealing to his own thoughts. And not only that, but he also spoke the same way the Joker did. And he imitated him in every movement and tone of voice. One by one, James started to gradually disappear from around people, and the dark character started to show up within him. And this character wanted revenge. Revenge on all people who made him feel belittled, of all people who made him feel like he was an outsider. Then, the matter took a serious turn. Within 3 months, James started buying a lot of weapons, in addition of explosive materials, which he ordered online. His diary started to take a much scarier road. There was a page titled Insights into the Mind of Madness. On this page, James was counting the number of people he was supposed to kill. And in another page, he wrote about all the different ways possible to kill. Is he supposed to kill using bombs or chemical weapons? Should he kill them all once or be a serial killer? And finally, should the process be carried out in the airport or in the cinema? But at the end, he decided to carry out the operation in the cinema. Then he went to all the cinemas around to see the most suitable one to commit his crime. And at the end, he chose a cinema in Aurora Mall called Section 16. Afterwards, he began observing the halls and analyzing their composition. He wrote down the 12th hall, 2 entrances, and the vision is marginal, and the 13th hall, 4 entrances, and the vision is clear. Avoid it. He wrote nothing next to the 9th hall but a mark. Then he started planning his crime in detail. The entrance from which he would enter, from which direction would people try to escape, and how he was going to kill the terrified people in front of him. James planned literally every little detail about the crime. Later, he dyed his hair orange, and with that, all that remains is to implement the plan in reality.
Okay, do you like Batman? Do you love a good old-fashioned summer blockbuster? Well, here comes the 3rd and final installment of Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy.
On the 20th of July, 2012, the final film of Christopher Nolan's trilogy was released in America, which is The Dark Knight Rises. Everyone was excited to go watch the movie, and the cinema was full of people, thrilled to see the end of the legendary trilogy. People were happy and enthusiasm was filling the atmosphere, and one of the many people who were buying the tickets was James. And here, the film starts. After 20 minutes exactly, James exited the hall and went to his car, which contained bombs and weapons he had been saving for the past few months. But before he does anything, for a moment, his old character faintly appears, and he thought to himself, I shouldn't do this. It isn't right to kill all these people just like that. Then he decided to call one of the psychological support centers. But nobody answered. It was then he knew that was the destiny. Because in his diary, under the crime plan he wrote, the destiny is cruel to the unlucky. So he took the weapons and went into the cinema. In the 9th hall, there was a guy named Marcus Wather. When he was sitting and happily enjoying the movie, he noticed the shadow of a standing man, which made him agitated. And the owner of the shadow was James. The moment Marcus turned to see who was standing up, James started shooting. And the shooting gun was so loud that everyone in the cinema was running away. The amount of screams was really scary, and many calls of help were made to the police. But when the police arrived, James had already killed 12 people and injured 20. The youngest one of the killed victims was a girl called Veronica Moser, and she was 9 years old. But that day, James killed siblings, parents, and sons, and brought grief to a lot of families. After this mass killing, James coldly left the cinema. The police was already there by then, and although he could escape in the middle of the chaos people were creating, he didn't do that. Instead, he just stood beside his car. One of the police squad saw him, but at first glance, he thought he was one of them because of the way he was dressing. After looking at him a little more, he immediately knew he wasn't and started to ask him who he was, shoutedly. James, on the other hand, told him he was the Joker. The weird thing is that James did not resist. Instead, he was very cooperative and handed himself to the police. But at the same time, he told them a much more terrifying news. He told the police that he left explosives in his apartment and that it could explode at any moment. Meanwhile, James' neighbor was fuming because of the loud sounds of music coming from his room, so she went to tell him to turn it down a little. She kept knocking on the door, but nobody opened it. She thought of opening the door herself and going in, but at the last moment, she backed away from doing that, and she called the police, which were already in their way to James' apartment. And that was the best decision she had ever made, because she didn't know what would have happened if she opened that door. As soon as the police arrived, they broke the window glass and decided to bring in an explosive robot. They discovered that if the neighbor has opened the door, all of the explosives would have been activated. 2 days later, they could finally finish dismantling all explosives inside his room. There was too much of it, to the point that if all of them exploded, the entire building would have exploded. And just like that, James' plan failed.
Although the perpetrator of this evil act has received a lot of attention over the last couple of days, that attention will fade away. And in the end, after he has felt the full force of our justice system, what will be remembered are the good people.
His trial began on July the 23rd, 2012, and he was charged with 24 first-degree murders and 116 attempts, in addition to 2 counts of possession of dangerous weapons and explosives. Then, James made the announcement that he was willing to admit everything he did for a life sentence. In other words, he chose that instead of the death sentence. But the prosecutors refused. They wanted to proceed with the charges against him because in their view, he was someone who deserved a death sentence. And here it comes, the problem, guys. The trial gets continuously delayed because his lawyers say that they need more time to look through his psychological state, while the victims' families are under an enormous mental torment because of him. Then, 2 specialized psychologists intervened and said, yes, he is indeed mentally ill, but he still has the ability to differ between the wrong and the right. But they still postponed the trial despite the doctor's statement. On January 2015, another trial began, and the lawyers wanted to postpone it again, but the judge refused this time. He saw that the postponement was just a waste of time since 2012, and finally, on the 16th of July 2015, after a trial that lasted for 11 weeks, he was sentenced to a life sentence, and exactly for 3,813 years. This was one of the longest cases in the history of the United States of America. I still don't understand why they waited for so long to get the court's final decision. We literally watched his transformation from asking about the meaning of life to thinking that destiny is cruel to the unlucky, from being just a slightly different kid to a criminal, to someone who justifies himself for killing. And here I was wondering, was James someone who was possible to rescue? If the psychological support center answered when he called them, would it turn to be different? If you realized, guys, the psychologists did not have a noticed role in the story, although it was obvious that he had such inclinations and preferences. They didn't take any action to find a solution for that, or even to stop it from development. Leave your opinions in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in another video with another story. Bye.